flow.
Welcome to episode 98 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. As of Monday, March 27th, the Toronto Maple Leafs are still in second place in the Atlantic Division. Nothing has changed, folks. Nothing has changed. The Boston Bruins remain a wagon. They might finish with the greatest regular season record in NHL history. So the Leafs are just going to have to settle for second place in the Atlantic. They are coming off a victory over the Nashville Predators, a dominant performance against the Carolina Hurricanes, even though it resulted in a loss, a 6-2 win over the Panthers, and a 7-2 loss to the Islanders. So they are 2-2-0 since our last podcast. We have a lot to get into. Auston Matthews is back. What's going on with the Leafs goaltending situation? The Tampa Bay Lightning kind of stink. Is it finally time for the Leafs to just take it to them and hammer them in the first round of the playoffs? And then we are also going to talk about the Western Conference playoff picture. You know, we'll talk about the East as well, but the West, some interesting things are developing. So we have a lot to get into. But before we get into all that, it is time to officially welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
Anthony Bruno, as always, happy to be here. Episode 98 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast. Shout out goes to the only player in the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs to rock the number 98, Victor Mete, who some people may roll their eyes at, but Victor came to play earlier in the season when we needed help on the blue lines. The Leafs were stacked with injuries, and we went to full emergency mode. And I thought Mete looked okay when he was called up from the Marlies. Interesting career for him. Remember when he just kind of exploded in Montreal, and everyone thought Montreal had this kind of next great defense. I mean, like, he looked fantastic, and some people thought it's because he was playing with Weber and this and that. But things haven't quite worked out for him. But from what I saw this year, I mean, hopefully he can get a shot in the NHL somewhere sometime soon.
I like Victor Mete. And one thing you forgot to mention, Lepore, he is from Woodbridge, Ontario.
Of course he is.
Woodbridge, Ontario's Victor Mete. So yeah, you know I'm a big Victor Mete fan. Good player, can absolutely fly, skates like the wind. And I mean, I know he wasn't really going to have the best opportunity to showcase his talents playing on this Leafs defense core, which now has really, including Victor Mete and Jordy Ben, is like 11 NHL defensemen deep, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, shout out to Victor Mete. He's gonna have a long career. He's gonna stick around. Good player.
I could see him being a guy who does really well in Europe. Like, he could have a legit career, maybe in Switzerland or the KHL or something. He's that style, right? Kind of like that big ice, skates well style. Fingers crossed for Victor Mete from Woodbridge.
Yeah, shout out Victor Mete from Woodbridge, Ontario. All right, Lepore, let's get right into this. So, as I mentioned off the top of the show, the Leafs are 2-0 since our last podcast. A very disappointing 7-2 loss to the Islanders. You always want to beat the shit out of the Islanders because, you know, John Tavares is going into that building. They're going to boo him. They're going to break out the "we don't need you" chants and all that. So that was a little disappointing that the Leafs kind of fell flat in that game, but then bounced back with a big win over the Florida Panthers, a team that's fighting for their playoff lives. And then one of their most dominant games of the season, as crazy as it sounds, even though they lost 5-3 to the Hurricanes, they outshot them 18-5 in the second period, took it to them for most of that game, and then finished off the week with a 3-2 win over Nashville. So what are your thoughts at this point, Lepore? It seems, you know, it's like I said it right at the top of the show. Like, nothing has changed. They're still playing at a 109-point pace. They're still behind the Bruins. They're still going to play the Lightning in the first round of the playoffs. What are your thoughts right now on this Leafs team?
Well, I don't remember if it was last episode or the episode before where we talked about how Jekyll and Hyde the Leafs are. Let's take a look at this week. That game against the Islanders was an absolute abomination. If I remember correctly, they scored 4 goals after Leafs turnovers. Just pathetic. One of those games, throw it in the trash, burn it, kick it to the curb, whatever terminology you want to use. But then you fast forward to the Carolina game. And they look great again last night, but I really think that that Carolina game was on full display of what this team can look like when they're playing at 100. I've been very hard on this team. I've called this team a pretender in weeks past before they're dead. Yes, I have. In weeks past, I looked at this team. I'm like, you know what? This is a good team. It's not a great team, because even when they were winning, they weren't really showing me that they could dominate good teams over a 7-game series. From what I saw in these last 2 games against Carolina and Nashville, and I know it's a small sample size, but heck, these are the 2 most recent games. If they play that way, this team can go on a run for the Stanley Cup. If they play the way they played against Carolina, this team can beat anyone. And again, ironic you mentioned that they lost, but we bossed Carolina, bossed them. They were just trying to flip the puck out of their end, and we were coming back at them. The underlying numbers for that game were fucking hilarious on how much they were in favor of Toronto. But at the same time, it's so funny. Like the old saying, hockey is stupid, or hockey makes no sense. The underlying numbers, the shots on goal, and they lose. How? And that's why they say hockey is the hardest sport to bet on, because it makes no sense. And to be fair, I was worried. I was worried as hell for the game against Nashville, because I actually watched the Seattle the Kraken versus Predators game from the day before, and Nashville was pathetic. They were absolutely pathetic. If I remember correctly, the Kraken scored 4 goals in the third period, and they were all just brutal, like turnovers right in front of the net.
That team without Roman Josi and Philip Forsberg, like they're still scrapping away. They're fighting for a playoff spot, but man, they're just not very good.
Yeah, someone broke down how good their goaltending has been as well. And if you adjust based on goals saved above expected, they'd be like at the bottom of the standings. Like they have a terrible D. They get goaltending when they need it. But I was worried for that game, because you had this game where Nashville looked absolutely pathetic the day before, and you got a Toronto team that, let's face it, probably should have won against Carolina. So you were kind of thinking maybe you'd get a letdown from the Leafs and a Nashville team that was buttoned up. And I mean, Nashville didn't look how they looked against Seattle. It was just a case of the Leafs, like you hear the saying all the time of a solid road win. That was a perfect road win. I mean, they were heavily outshot early. It was one of those ones where you're just watching, and 5 minutes in, the shots are like 9-0, and you're like, I remember like 2 shots on goal. But then Leafs got that power play goal from JT. If I remember correctly, he was scoreless in like 7 games before that, and he got 2 and a helper last night, so that was good to see. But like I said, man, we get a lot of recency bias in Leafland. But looking at those two most recent games, the Leafs look nothing short of fantastic.
My biggest takeaway from what you just said, Lepore, is that, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Lepore is back on board.
Oh, I'm nervous.
He said the Leafs, if they continue playing the way that they're playing, especially over these last couple of games, that they can go on a run for the Stanley Cup. After Michael Lepore sat here multiple times, called the Leafs a pretender. And listen, it was hard to disagree with you, honestly, when you were talking about how they still didn't look great defensively, despite the numbers. Offensively, they just weren't scoring at the rate we're used to. The other teams in the East just seem to be playing better. But Lepore, it seems like you are fully back on board the train.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Happy to be back, everybody. Happy to be back. Please welcome me back into the Blue Sea. I'll appreciate the kindness.
No, but you said it, man. I mean, they looked really good the last couple of games. So, like, even going back to that Carolina game, they outshot the Canes 44-28. And we were actually talking about this and laughing about it before we came on today, looking at the underlying numbers of Auston Matthews in that game. So, if you don't know, he had 15 shots on goal against Carolina, which was one of the greatest single game shot performances in NHL history.
Yeah.
I believe Ray Bourque has the single game record with 19 shots on goal. Who knows if some of those shots were a little questionable with the scorekeepers in the 90s and some of the funny things they were doing. Who knows, right? We don't know if that's the actual record. We'll say it's the record, but Auston Matthews, 15 shots on goal. I also believe, Lepore, that he's the first player since Ovechkin in like 2006 to have 15 shots on goal and score 2 goals in a game.
That's the one I'm looking at the list right now. So he's 15 shots on goal, but the most recent person on the list is Hossa in 2006 with 16 shots on goal.
Oh,
And then
okay, there you
Ovechkin,
go.
but he didn't get he's mentioned about the 2 goals. Ovechkin also got the 2 goals. Ovechkin in 2006, 15. So it's been a long time. Like we're going on like almost 2 decades since someone put up a shot total like that.
That's insane. And even looking at Matthews' underlying numbers, as I alluded to when I started this rant, with Matthews on the ice in all situations, the Leafs had 45 shot attempts and only 9 against. 45-9 with Auston Matthews on the ice in all situations against Carolina.
Yeah,
just absurd. It's time for a quick break because we have a public service announcement. Manscaped now has beard products. If you haven't already heard, the leaders in below the waist grooming are traveling north of your South Pole with their revolutionary Beard Hedger Pro Kit. They have 2 brand new products, the Weed Whacker 2.0 and the Beard Hedger Pro Kit, which confirms they have all the best tools for your hygiene toolbox. Tame your mane from waist to face by going to manscaped.com and using our exclusive promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. Lepore, Manscaped has done it again. They are always thinking about us men who desperately need help looking our best.
And speaking of men who desperately need help looking their best, Anthony Bruno, I have been through a lot of nose hair trimmers, embarrassingly enough, and they all suck. They either don't cut at all or they just pull your hairs out and it hurts like a bitch. But the Weed Whacker 2.0 goes in there like a buzzsaw. And you're good to go, man. It is hands down the best nose hair trimmer I have ever used. Head to manscaped.com, GFP20 for 20% off, and get the best product for your nose hair that you possibly can.
You said it, man. It doesn't pull on your hairs. It goes in there nice and smooth, cuts everything, gets the job done. Your nose feels nice and clean. Same thing in your ears. And then don't forget the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Now that Manscaped is putting out beard products, are you kidding me? These guys put out top of the line stuff again. I'm not just saying this because they're a part of this show. Like, they have incredible products that make you look good, feel good, and perform good. So get 20% off and free shipping using GFP20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using our exclusive promo code GFP20. And Lepore, that is a perfect segue into our Auston Matthews conversation.
Yeah.
Because he appears to be fully back.
Yeah.
The points are there. The goals are there. And it's not even that. He just looks so much more explosive now. And he's flying all over the ice. He's creating plays. He's creating chances for not only himself, but his teammates. He looks like the Auston Matthews who won the Hart Trophy last season. And the Auston Matthews who scored 41 goals in the COVID-shortened season. And it's amazing to see. And there were so many people who have been shitting on Auston Matthews over the last few months, saying like Connor McDavid is just giving a big FU to Auston Matthews and the rest of the league because he scored 60 goals in 1 fewer game than Matthews did last season. He's almost doubling him up in points. But Auston Matthews quietly, Lepore, and listen, he's not going to play 82 games because of some of the injuries he's had. He is now producing at a 96-point pace over 82 games. And he's probably going to score 40 goals again. So your thoughts on what we have seen recently from Auston Matthews?
It's so weird how, to me anyway, how black and white it's been. And you mentioned his numbers. He was still on pace for a great season, but we're going to compare what he's doing to his previous seasons. But he didn't look good compared to what we were used to. These last few games, I mean, dominant. And it's funny because, man, injuries are a weird thing. It affects your confidence. It was a hand injury, apparently. And they said, was it maybe an ankle injury as well? But the confidence is just so high. His movement, he's everywhere. Even on the power play, a little thing. You think, okay, he'd be okay on the power play. No, he looks way better on the power play, just moving it around, dipsy doodling, the Auston Matthews that we're used to. And we were all hoping and praying. And I remember saying, we had this discussion a few weeks ago, what's wrong with Auston Matthews? And my take was, I don't really know, but he better figure it the fuck out before the playoffs because we need him to be at 100 to beat some of these teams. But the timing's good. He looks fantastic. Hopefully he's well rested. I hope he gets 40 just to be like, oh, even when you guys say I have a bad season, I got 40. But good to see, like, nothing negative about it. And the thing is too, you watch, especially on the power play, but in all situations, other guys are feeding off it too. Like Yarncroc has looked better playing with him. And I mean, the whole discussion of like, Yarncroc makes his line mates better, or the line mates make Yarncroc better. But either way, the line looks great. And just like the flow the Leafs have with Matthews playing those minutes, just he's a different player. He's a different player. We can get into the debate of, okay, Connor McDavid's the best player in the world, and who's in second. And we compared McKinnon and Matthews to each other last week. But there's that special group of players who, beyond points and whatever, these guys are different. And Matthews is in that category. How I always described it was this, okay? And this is kind of fun. Think of any player in the NHL, rank them out of 5. So average players being 3. And then you have very, good players, very good players at 4. And then the star players who are 5. But I've made the point, there are certain players that are 6s. Like Sidney Crosby's a 6 out of 5. Connor McDavid's like a 7 out of 5. Matthews is in that group. He's a 6 out of 5. Now, I'm not saying he's Crosby or McDavid, but those guys are historically, again, by historically, like the championships. And, well, not for McDavid. A little slip of the tongue there.
Numbers wise, I mean, McDavid is doing things that we haven't seen since Mario Lemieux.
Yeah. So, like certain guys, like, for example, like in Iginla, like that just different X factor that he had that put him at a different level from even the star players. So maybe we have egg on our face to even question him, or it was just a matter of injuries and he really and truly wasn't healthy. But that feels good, doesn't it, Leafs fans? The fact that he came out with that news that he was battling some stuff. And I mean, you go on social media and everyone's like, oh, boo-hoo, excuses, this and that. Well, there's no way to prove what injury he had or how bad it was. But since he came out with those statements, he's been lighting it the fuck up. So what are you going to say? Clearly there was something. He just looks different. So,
Lepore, it feels fantastic because the amount of Leaf haters that I've seen, and again, I talk about this all the time, how I'm more in the rabbit hole than you are in terms of social media, because I'm posting on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook and all these different platforms, and I'm everywhere, and I'm in the comments sections. I'm seeing what people are saying. Lepore, you have no idea the amount of comments that I have seen this season about how Auston Matthews sucks. He's overrated. He shouldn't have won the Hart Trophy last season. He's not the same player. Connor McDavid is 3 times the player that Auston Matthews is. All the trash that I've seen. Now, listen, a lot of it is coming from Leaf haters who just want a reaction and are trying to piss people off on social media. But what we have seen from this guy over the last couple of weeks, he is fully back to the player that we are used to seeing. And it got me thinking, Lepore, like, not only were the Leafs sort of managing his injury and, he was held out at certain points throughout the season, I think Auston Matthews himself was managing the injury and saying, listen, like, I don't need to be the Auston Matthews of the last 2 seasons to get through this regular season. Like, I'm just going to kind of manage the injury that I'm dealing with. And I know he specifically talked about his hand injury, right? Or his hand, wrist, whatever it is, how that's been hampering him. There may have been other things, honestly, Lepore, that have been hampering Auston Matthews this season. Even just looking at how explosive he is now. Maybe it was some lower body ailment as well. But my point is that I think that he has recognized, and we talked about this on a previous show, the importance of making a deep playoff run and potentially winning a championship. How much more important that is to him at this point than winning another Rocket Richard, than winning another Hart Trophy, than winning some of these other awards like the Ted Lindsay. So maybe he's been kind of coasting throughout the regular season. And now that the playoffs are approaching, and as you said, hopefully he fucking turns it on and shows us that he's capable of carrying this team. Maybe that's what he's been doing all along. He's like, listen, we're now a couple weeks out from the playoffs. I'm going to turn back into the Auston Matthews of old now that I've been managing my injuries throughout the season.
Yeah, and you pile onto that. They've known who they're going to play in the playoffs for like the last 50 games. So that motivation, whatever, it's not there. Way to go, NHL. Way to go that you could pinpoint opponents that far in advance so players can coast. But anyway, that's a podcast on its own. But yeah, I mean, I said a few weeks ago, I said it didn't fucking matter what was wrong with him. I just hope he's back. And I feel that way now. It's like we're past it now. We're here now. So let's see it, Austin. I mean, we got to beat Tampa, Bruno.
We have to beat Tampa, and we will get to that later in the show. And we got a juicy conversation coming your way about the Tampa Bay Lightning and Toronto Maple Leafs. But Lepore, we got to talk about the Leafs goaltending first.
Sure. Always.
Because, you talk about Jekyll and Hyde. It's been Jekyll and Hyde with Samsonov and Murray and their home and road splits this season. Samsonov has been an absolute monster at home. He's not been great on the road, and it's been the opposite with Matt Murray. He's been good on the road, terrible at home. He's been terrible since he came back from injury. Just reading off some Matt Murray stats, since he returned from injury in 6 games, he's 3-3 with an .886 save percentage and a .368 goals against, and has allowed 4 goals in 5 of those 6 starts since returning from injury. So what the hell's going on here? Are we going to get to a point, Lepore, where it's going to be Samsonov and net to start the series at home against Tampa in the first couple of games, and then they go on the road in Tampa, and is Murray going to play on the road?
Can you imagine?
And then Joseph Woll, who's been unbelievable this season. You want to talk about stats, Lepore? In 19 games with the Marlies, Joseph Woll is 16-2-1 with a .930 save percentage and a .229 GAA. And in 4 games at the NHL level this year, he's 3-1 with a .934 save percentage and a .203 goals against. His numbers have improved at the NHL level, and maybe that's because he's just playing behind a much better team. But my goodness, it's hard to ignore how well he's played. So Lepore, please help me sort out what the hell is going on with this goaltending situation. It's a never-ending conversation.
Yeah. It's funny because every couple of weeks, I mean, we talk about goaltending. We're a Leafs podcast. We're going to talk about the guys in between the pipes. And I find every couple of weeks, you can have a take. There were phases of the season where even if Murray wasn't playing well and dealing with some injuries, you could say, okay, he's the vet. He's the guy. We brought him in. When it comes playoff time, it'll be Matt Murray. Like deep down, you kind of thought, yeah, it'll be Murray game 1 against Tampa. Then Samsonov kind of got more comfortable as the season's gone on. And you're like, no debate. There's no debate that Samsonov is the starter. Murray just hasn't been good enough. We figured it out. Then Woll comes in and is just, like you said, unbelievable. His numbers don't make sense. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do next year, because if Joseph Woll has shown us anything, it's that he's too good for the AHL. Those are video game numbers, what you just spat out. So I'm a firm believer that you let guys cook in the AHL as long as you can, especially goalies. So when they come to the NHL, they're overly ripe. But it does get to a point where, like, okay, this might hamper his development, or this could help us win because this kid might be that good. So I hate to be that Leaf fan who thinks ahead, but decisions are going to have to be made in the summer. And I mean, the easy one is to say we're going to blast away Murray either by trade. And I've heard people talk about buyouts, and it's one of the most popular calculations on Money Puck and Puckpedia, the buyout calculators. But I mean, I don't know if I see the Leafs going that way, taking money on the books with their types of contracts. So that'll be a storyline, man. That'll be a storyline. Where do you see it? Like right now, I mean, the point you made, and I know it's a topic of one of them starting at home, one of them starting away because of the numbers they've put up, but we're not going to do that.
No,
like, it's like,
no, there's no way
there's no way
do that.
Like the Leafs go up 2-0. Samsonov looks great. Okay, we're going to Murray in game 3. No, we're not going to do that. So, like, how do you see it right now? Like the playoffs start tomorrow. Like, do you see Samsonov, Murray, and still Woll in the distance?
Yeah, Samsonov is definitely going to be the guy. I think Murray is going to end up being the backup, as good as Joseph Woll has been. And you can make the argument that maybe Joseph Woll is the best Leafs goaltender. I know that that's a take. That's a strong take. He's only played 4 games this year in the National Hockey League. And I believe those are he's played 8 NHL games in his career.
Mm-hmm.
4 last year. He had a .911 save percentage, .276 GAA. He's got some pretty good numbers. It's only been 8 career games in the NHL, but the kid has looked really good. I don't think they're going to turn to Joseph Woll as a backup or even start him in a playoff game. Now, it's possible, Lepore. We actually saw the Florida Panthers do this, where they had Bobrovsky I believe Chris Drieger, and then Spencer Knight, who was their young stud, and they turned to him in a playoff series. I believe that was 2 years ago, I want to say, when Drieger was still on the team. It was wild. They were just going through goalies, and next thing you know, Spencer Knight is starting a do-or-die playoff game for the Florida Panthers. Now, you hope it doesn't get to that point with the Leafs because you hope that Samsonov is the guy. Like, as it stands right now, I think the Leafs would be insane if Ilya Samsonov is not the game one starter. And I don't think they're going to yo-yo back and forth, even though I mentioned the home road splits. I highly doubt they're going to do that. Like, Samsonov would have to play just horrible, horrible hockey in those first 2 games against Tampa for him not to get the game 3 start. Like, even if the Leafs split the first 2 games at Scotiabank, like, he's starting game 3 unless he allows like 8 goals in those first 2 games and the Leafs have to like win one of the games 6-4 or something like that. So right now, Lepore, it's Samsonov's net.
To be fair, I mean, is as inconsistent as Murray has been and how frustrating he's been for Leafs fans because of the up and down play and the injuries, it's not a bad backup play. Like, the whole thing of, oh, you're screwed. I mean, people always make the point, oh, if the Montreal Canadiens lose Carey Price, they're fucked, which is true. But I hate to break it to everyone, if most teams lose their starting goalie, they're fucked. It's going to take a hell of a mountain to overcome. In our case, I mean, I'm not going to say I'll be all gung-ho about it, but to me, it's not that different. If, say, things aren't going well for Samsonov and Murray goes in, he's got experience. He's won 2 cups, as everybody knows. What I'm trying to say is there are worse situations than having Matt Murray go in there. For example, I'll put it this way. As well as Woll has played, the contracts aside, the reputations aside, let's say Samsonov went down with an injury in game 82, and we had to put Woll or Murray in game 1. Even if Woll was playing way better than Murray was down the stretch, would you go with Woll? Would you go with the kid? That's tough. And I'm not saying for sure I would or for sure I wouldn't, but that's controversial big time. And again, minus the contracts, minus the reputation, just to go with a kid who's played like 10 NHL games or whatever it will be at that point. But it's always fun in Leafland, as I always say, but I just think I'm on the same side as you. Well, that it's going to be Sammy and Murray is going to be the backup. I think this is a talk. Okay, this is a talk. Let's say the Leafs will go 2 rounds deep. Let's get confident here and cocky and say that the Leafs go 2 rounds deep. What's the over under, or what percentage chance would you put on Murray at some point in those 2 rounds getting in the net?
Interesting question, Lepore. I'm going to say, honestly, I'm going to say 0.
0.
Because if the Leafs are cooking, I would imagine, you know, let's say they're cooking in round 1. They take out Tampa in 5 or 6 games. I know, laugh at us all you want, because I think we all know that series is probably going to go 7. The Leafs could play like my men's league team, and it would go 7 games in the first round. But let's say they are cooking. Samsonov's the game 1 starter. I don't see Murray getting in the net, even if, you know, they go into the first couple games against Boston, even if they go down Lepore, even if they're down 2-0 against Boston in the second round. Like, I still think Samsonov is the guy, and they're just riding him at that point. So I'm going to say 0. Honestly, I don't think Matt Murray gets into a game, even with the Leafs in the second round. What do you think?
I think it's an interesting discussion on, I mean, if Samsonov's bad, he's bad. It's an easy decision, but how bad would he have to be to make the switch? Is it kind of bad, average, really bad for us to kind of like lose confidence in him? Because how much has he shown us? I mean, let's face it, he's still a kid himself. And I mean, there's no real pedigree there. So I could see it, the switch maybe happening quicker than people think. And I mean, I don't think Keefe and Dubas would be the types to panic, but just a situation maybe, again, like let's say they go down 2-0 to the Bruins and it's 2 kind of close-ish games. I'm not saying I would push for Murray to start game 3, but I think there's
a conversation
like, there's a conversation at
probably
that point
turn to him at that point.
Exactly. Like it's more than other teams would if their starting goalie has them down 2-0 in the series. So I think the leash on Samsonov is not that long, to be honest. And to touch on what I said before too, these go hand in hand. Murray in that situation is not a bad play. And I'll say this, man, and everybody who plays sports can relate to this. It's clear, like, I don't think this is a hot take to say that part of Murray's up and downs over the last few years have not been because of talent. They're heavily because what's going on in between the years. The confidence,
injuries.
Injuries, yeah. But when he is playing, I mean, we always question, like, is he there? Is he confident? How does he look? To the point of me, what I was about to say about the people who've played sports before, those types of athletes, or almost anyone in general, if you really think about it, they're better in situations where they just get thrown to the wolves. You get told the day before you're starting, or you get told in the morning you're starting, rather than sitting there, the build up to the series, the build up to a game. For the guy who may be a little mentally sensitive, throw him out there because there's no time to think or worry about it. You're just going to play, and it is what it is. Right. So, like, I'm not saying the Leafs have like this strategy to let him know on game day that he's going in to face the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Boston Bruins, but that ties into how I'm not devastated by that situation with Murray, because I think he could thrive in that situation because, again, maybe I'm speculating, but with maybe what's going on between the years.
No, you're right, man. It really could be a lot worse than having Matt Murray, two-time Stanley Cup champion, as your backup goalie, who, despite the horrible stats since returning from injury, has actually looked pretty good at times and has made some 10-bell saves and has made some saves in some big moments where the Leafs really needed a save. Again, despite his .886 save percentage since returning from his injury. So the Leafs, the good thing, Lepore, is they have options, and I think they can just take it day by day leading up to the playoffs. Hopefully all three goalies stay healthy, and hopefully they just go with the guy who's playing the best come playoff time. It's as simple as that, and right now, that is Ilya Samsonov. All right, Lepore, we got to talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning, because this team, since the All-Star break, has been terrible.
Weird. Yeah,
They've been
weird.
terrible.
Weird.
All right, they are 10, 11, and 5 since the All-Star break. That is 26 games. Over their last 26 games, they have the 22nd best record in the NHL. So since coming back from the All-Star break, February 6th, the Lightning have only won 10 of 26 games, are 22nd in the NHL, have a -8 goal differential. They are currently riding a 4-game losing streak. Tanner Jeannot has been an abomination. They traded 5 draft picks and Cal Foote for him. He has 3 points in 15 games with Tampa, has yet to score a goal. The Lightning have been outscored 10-3 with Jeannot on the ice at 5-on-5. I don't want to turn this into we're just going to shit on Tanner Jeannot and what the hell were they thinking about that trade. But oh my God, Lepore, we were talking about this earlier in the show. If the Leafs can't beat this Tampa Bay Lightning team, which I think at this point we can say is the worst Lightning team of the last 3 or the last 4 years. They've been in the last 3 Stanley Cup finals. This team is worse than all those other teams, just looking at the numbers. Now, I will say this, looking at the underlying numbers since the All-Star break, they actually aren't bad. They're still controlling the shot attempts, the expected goals, and the high danger scoring chances and the scoring chances. They're still, in the positive in a lot of those categories, but it's not reflecting in the standings. They've only won 10 of 26 games since the break. So is this the time, Lepore? Like, if the Leafs can't beat this Lightning team, what the hell are we even doing?
Yeah. If things keep going the way they've been going, and on the flip side, we were pointing out earlier in the show that Matthews is back and the Leafs look fantastic. So if this keeps going the rest of the regular season, and right now, the Leafs have a 7-point spread on them with a game in hand. So let's say if this team finishes 10 plus points ahead of the Lightning, I'm not the guy to ever talk about, a team lost because of heart and character, or to say, a team just doesn't have it. Like, I always say that's lazy to say that, because there are so many factors in a series. Shots go off posts, shots get blocked, they get deflected and pick a top corner. So I always hate when people use those takes. A team just doesn't have it. I will be questioning whether or not this Leafs group has it if they can't get past this Lightning team, because we don't have that excuse, man. The Leafs have always had that excuse of who they're playing in the first round, minus Montreal and Columbus. Oh, it was Washington, a President's Trophy winner. Oh, it was like Bruins teams that, were going on runs to the Stanley Cup final. Tampa Bay last year, a team that ended up going to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. The way Tampa's looked, I mean, you try your best to throw in the trash, the pedigree that team has, but we're talking about like a third of the season that they've looked bad. Like they've been one of the lesser teams in the National Hockey League. You cannot really ask in today's day and age of the 3-point system and how the standings are and how the conferences are kind of top heavy. You cannot really ask for a better opponent. Home ice advantage against a team that has been this bad for this long of a time. We talked a couple weeks ago when the Sabres and Sens were charging for the playoffs and how if they slip an 8, you don't want anything to do with them because they've been riding high for half the season and they've been playing playoff hockey and hockey that matters, playing for their lives to get in. So you don't want that team because they've been great. It's the opposite with Tampa. This team has looked bad. You want that team. So if this Toronto Maple Leafs team does not beat this Tampa Bay Lightning team, if this continues the way it's gone, like who knows, maybe Tampa wins 10 in a row and this is a completely different topic, but I won't know what to say. To me, it'll be like, yeah, something's just fundamentally wrong here on the inside. It was famous on the Amazon show. McLean mentioned the demons in the heads. I will really and truly believe that if they can't get past this Tampa team. So it's time, man. It's time. Even beyond like their play on the ice, and it affects their play on the ice. But that shit they went through with Cooper, you know what I mean? How he benched the guys.
Stamkos, Kucherov, and Point.
And then the next game, they went a period without a shot. Like Vasilevsky, and we won't be surprised if he turns it on game 1 of the playoffs, but he's had a good season. He hasn't had a Vasilevsky season. So I don't know what more you would want. Well, you know what, man? I'll put it this way. Okay. I will throw this out there. Let's go through the East. If you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, as it stands right now, who would you rather play in the Eastern Conference as opposed to the Tampa Bay Lightning? Boston, obviously not. Okay. And I will say it, I think at this point, I would take the Lightning over Carolina, New York, and New Jersey, the way things have gone. Maybe the Islanders, but okay, the team in the 7 seed or 8 seed, wherever they end up, and even the Penguins. It's still like the Crosby factor and all that. So I'd say maybe that one's a debate. I'd say one up on the Islanders. It can go either way on the Penguins, but everybody else, no, I'll take the Lightning. How the season's gone, especially with home ice advantage. There is no excuse this year unless there's a 4-way collision in the warm-up of game 1 between Nylander, Marner, Matthews, and Tavares, and they're all out for the series. There's no excuse. The Leafs have to win this series. And I hate to be the guy to put like those types of expectations on them or pressure on them, but I have high expectations of them. I have for the last few years. And now there's no excuse to say, oh, we're playing a team that no, it doesn't matter now. You're better than them, period. And we've seen you lose twice to teams that you've been better than, and that includes Montreal and Columbus. And it feels kind of different because this is a Tampa Bay team that has 2 Stanley Cups, but no, they have to win.
You want another reason the Leafs should win this series? The Lightning have been bad on the road this year. You want to talk about Jekyll and Hyde? This team has been incredible at home. On the road, they're 17-19-1. 2 games under 500 on the road. Wow. That is the 22nd best road record in the NHL right now.
Yeah. Like I guess with the top heavy talents about the line matching, maybe. I don't know.
Outside of Amalie Arena, my goodness, this team has not been good. So you're telling me you're going to get a Leafs team that's playing well right now, that's going to have home ice advantage against a Lightning team that can't figure it out on the road, against an Andrei Vasilevsky who's not having a great season. He's having a good season, but he's not having like a Vezina caliber season. Their depth has taken a hit from last year, losing Andre Palat, losing Ryan McDonough. Again, their top players are having good seasons. But man, if you can't beat this Lightning team, a team that's played this many games, has played more games than any team in the NHL over the last 3+ seasons, you can't beat them now after Lepore, after they outscored them last year in 7 games. They outscored the Lightning 24-23. We're up 3-2 in the series. and found a way to lose.
Yeah.
If you can't beat this Lightning team at this moment in time, I don't know what to say, Lepore. Like, anything's in play at that point. And I know we want to extend Kyle Dubas, and we both like Sheldon Keefe, and we both like the core. But my God, with the way Tampa's been playing since the break, with the way they've been playing on the road, with some of the shit going on with John Cooper and the star players. Now, I don't want to totally overreact to that because that's a veteran team. John Cooper's a great coach. I'm sure they're going to figure some things out in terms of the dynamic in the room and just the feeling around that team leading into the playoffs. Like, they'll be ready to play. But my God, if you can't beat this team, I don't know, Lepore, like anything's in play. Literally anything is on the table, and I wouldn't be surprised if Matthews doesn't re-sign and wants to play out the final year of his contract. If they decide to trade one of the core four pieces, if they try to trade Morgan Riley or something like that, like anything's in play at that point if they can't beat Tampa this season.
Yeah, it would be tough to argue with anything. And again, I hate to be the guy just to have the answer, just because. That's the state we would be in. Should Kyle Dubas get fired? Has he done a good job? Yes, but he's gone. I don't care. Like, something's just wrong here. And it does get to a point, let's face it, where it's just a matter of it's time to move on. Whatever the reason is, it's not working and it's time to move on. We would be at that point. And that's not me to say I'll be outside Scotiabank Arena with a pitchfork saying I want everyone fired and everyone traded, but I wouldn't question any move. Like you said, dumping one of the big guys, a firing. What could you really say? I just pointed out that I would take Tampa over 5 of the teams in the easily, like no brainer in the Eastern Conference. So what more do you want, really, for a first round playoff matchup? So it's funny because as time moves on, I know we know the Leafs had the pressure builds every year with this group. They don't get it done, but this might be the most pressure packed series they've ever had, because even say last year, okay, they had home ice advantage, and like the Montreal series was weird, COVID, the bubble. No, Toronto's supposed to win this one 100%. And I think this will be the first time. And people say, oh, Montreal was that way, and maybe even Columbus. But to me, the Montreal one, like, you're playing again, the whole Canadian division thing, it was just weird. Like, I don't want to say I throw that one in
the Tavares injury 5 minutes into the game. There's just so much shit that went against the Leafs in that series. I don't want to make excuses. They still should have won the series being up 3-1. But with all those things you just said, Lepore, considering all the factors, like, now we're back to like a regular 82 game season. Leafs have home ice. They're a big favorite. Well, they're not going to be a huge favorite, but they'll be a sizable favorite in the first round. They got to do it, man.
Yeah. What would you expect the line to be for the series? The Leafs minus what?
Because I believe last year it was pretty close to a coin flip. I want to say the Leafs were like minus 115 to win the series. Yeah. I think the Leafs are going to be like a minus 130, minus 140 favorite, honestly, to win this series. And right now, Tampa's 13th in the NHL. They have the 13th best record in the league. So as you said, Lepore, like, it's hard to pick another team that you would rather play at this point. Maybe one of the wild card teams, sure, but I would rather play Tampa at this point than the Rangers, the Devils, or the Hurricanes, and obviously Boston, who's been a wagon. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think right now the Leafs would probably be priced around like a minus 130, minus 140 favorite with home ice against a team that has been bad on the road this year. And it's just like, it's put up or shut up at this point.
Yeah. Damn.
Talking it out like that, Lepore, it's a little bit scarier now, because like, this is it. Like, we've reached the point of no return, and maybe we said that last year, maybe we even said that the year before, but I feel like this is like the true point of no return. You can't use that excuse anymore. Oh, but the Lightning have been to 3 cup finals and they have Vasilevsky and Hedman. No, enough of that shit. Beat this damn team. You're better than them. End of story.
Yeah.
All right. Lepore, let's talk about the Western Conference, because we just talked about the Eastern Conference and, you know, how we would essentially take the Lightning at this point over some of the other teams. And when you look at the Eastern Conference right now, everyone's talking about how much of a gauntlet it is, and there's all these great teams. But might that gauntlet actually be in the Western Conference, Lepore, with the way things have been going recently? The LA Kings have been unbelievable lately, and that's going to be a very difficult first round matchup for the Edmonton Oilers, who last year faced the Kings without Drew Doughty, without Victor Arvidsson. Kevin Fiala was not on the team. This is a Kings team that has beefed up at the deadline, picking up Korpisalo and Gavrikov on the blue line. That team looks great. Colorado's been surging. They've essentially been the best team in the league over the last 6 weeks. Minnesota's playing well. You have some teams still fighting for a playoff spot. Some Canadian teams fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, the season that Calgary's had has been insanely frustrating, but crazy. Calgary and Winnipeg, I mean, Winnipeg's in the final wildcard spot. They are no slouch. You obviously have Vegas, who's been leading the Pacific Division for most of the season, and then the Dallas Stars, who are quietly having a great season. Is the Western Conference actually better than the East? Is that crazy to say, Lepore? Are we nuts for even thinking about this right now?
Yeah. It's funny because let's go head to head. Okay. As it stands right now, as you mentioned, you have Seattle and Winnipeg in the wild card spots. Okay. Who do you give the edge to, those two teams or the Islanders and Pittsburgh?
I mean, I'd still say the Islanders in Pittsburgh.
Ah, okay.
That's a check. That's a check for the East, at least in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I guess the Jets have been, based on how they started the season, haven't been the greatest. And
yeah, they've been struggling lately.
Rick Bowness has got some bad body language behind that bench. I don't know. He looks pretty frustrated. And then you go to the top. I'd say, I mean, we all think that the Avalanche are going to clip the Wild for top of that division. I'd say the Avalanche and the Bruins kind of knock each other out. I mean, people would say the Bruins regular season, what they've had, but it's still the Colorado Avalanche. So those teams knock each other out. And let's do it. Let's do the other five: the Oilers, the Kings, the Knights, the Stars, the Wild versus the other teams in the Eastern Conference. I mean, to me, it's at least debatable. It's at least debatable. And we were sitting here a few weeks ago, everyone was shouting about how the East is not fair. But the way the tables have turned, you mentioned LA, man. I feel like in the West, and maybe because it is the West, people don't watch them as much. The games are late. You have these teams that are really good. I mean, how many people when you hear those discussions on who's going to win the Stanley Cup or who you can see making a run, how many times have you heard people say Vegas? No one said Vegas.
No one's really been talking about Vegas. They're quietly just chugging along, first place in the Pacific, on pace for another great season. No one's really talking about them.
Yeah, they've been top 5 in the league the entire season. Let's check it on your app. Oh, it leaves. Oh, Vegas. Vegas was always right there, and no one's talking about them. LA, quietly good, man. Quietly good. And I am stoked. Bruno brought it up before the podcast started about LA playing Edmonton in the first round. I love that series. I'm a Kings guy because of the Wayner, which is funny. He's all wenching for the Oilers. But I guess my childhood was more in the Kings era. But I just think that would be a great series rematch of last year. Two different types of teams. Sadly, though, I caught a little bit of the Kings game yesterday. In case Leafs fans were wondering, both Durzi and Moore look very good. Tier. But
sad.
It's at least the debate. And yeah, I might give if someone asked me to give an edge to a conference right now, I may say the West. Really. I just see teams maybe even, I'll put it this way, and I touched on earlier how I hate to talk about how teams don't have heart and character, but the whole built for the playoffs thing, I don't know. Carolina, are they built for the playoffs?
Carolina's good, but my one thing with them, Lepore, over the last few years is that they're still lacking that high-end game-breaking talent. As good as Aho and Natchez are, Pacioretty only played a few games for them and then tore his Achilles again. Andrei Svechnikov, one of their best players, is now out for the season. That takes them a peg down for me.
Yeah.
I don't really believe in Carolina winning the cup this year, as good as they've been. So, and who would you rather take, Carolina or Vegas? Who's the better team?
Oh, it's not even close to me. It's not even close to me. I'd rather play Carolina than Vegas. And even going down, I mean, New Jersey, are they? Well, they're at least in show me mode because we don't know. And then the Rangers haven't been that great since their trades. So I don't know, man.
It's debatable, man.
It's debatable. Like it really is. And like teams, man, like maybe it's that old like West bias that we do think these teams are more built for the playoffs, but I wouldn't want to play Minnesota. I wouldn't want to have to go into XL Energy and have to be in that environment. The Kings, experienced group. They got some good young players now coming in. And just kind of there's that weird thing, I think, in the West where you have good teams, but teams at the same time don't have like a lot of pressure on them. And people can say, oh, like the players put pressure on themselves. And that's true. But say LA, like if someone said LA is going to be in the conference finals, I mean, we wouldn't be shocked. But at the same time, if they got ousted in the first round of Edmonton, like I don't think anyone's losing their job or like major trades are happening. Whereas in the East, I mean, the Bruins, the expectation is to win the whole thing. The Toronto Maple Leafs are the Toronto Maple Leafs. Tampa Bay's been a 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. So in their mind, it's win or bust. Then you go to the other side and the New York Rangers know exactly where they stand after every game. The media and fans either love them or hate them based on a W or an L. So there's
a lot of pressure on them too with the trades that they made.
Exactly. Good point. 100%. And then, I mean, the Devils, they've had a great regular season.
Yeah, they're the only team without pressure, Lepore, really, is the Devils, because this is like their first their first experience being a really good team in the playoffs. Like all their young guys are finally coming into their own, but no one's going to lose their job if the Devils lose to the Rangers in the first round.
And then you go to Carolina. I mean, they've had their injuries, but still, I mean, based on their last few regular seasons and how they've been this year, they want to go deep. The expectation is to go deep. So some scary teams in the West, man. Scary teams in the West. Like I said, it's at least a debate, and that's the way it should be, right? Like you don't want to see one conference being much stronger than the other. And we talk about the divisions and the matchups and how it fucks up the league. To be fair, I mean, the way the East stands right now kind of is what it is. It's not like there's no excuses. Like again, back to the Leafs. The Leafs don't have an excuse of like the gauntlet they would have to go through. I mean, yeah, they would get the Bruins in the second round, but it's the playoffs, man.
I still give the edge to the East. And I think it does come back to the conversation that there just seems to be more pressure and a sense of urgency around some of these teams in the East. Whereas the West, you have Minnesota, and they were almost supposed to kind of have, I don't want to really say a down season, but not maybe just not be as good as last season. But they've been really good. And Colorado, despite all their injuries, has been really good. But they just won the cup, so it's like how much pressure is really on Colorado? Then you have the Kings, who we talked about. I mean, you could say maybe the most pressure's on Edmonton because
100%.
they got to the conference final last year. McDavid and Draisaitl are in God mode. I mean, McDavid looks like arguably the most talented hockey player we've ever seen in his prime right now. So you don't want to waste those opportunities. And they're going to be on the road, it looks like, to start their series against the Kings, who have been one of the best teams in the league the last couple of months. So I would say that maybe Edmonton probably has the most pressure on them, but there doesn't seem to be as much pressure on these teams in the West as there is in the East. So I think that's kind of the separating factor at this point. And then obviously you have the Bruins in the East, who have been, the greatest team in NHL history. Yeah. So I still give the edge to the East, but man, the Western Conference and just the first round in general is going to be unbelievable, man, with some of these matchups.
Yeah, I don't know if I should bring it up now because we're kind of late in the show, because this is a whole topic. Who's got more pressure, the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Edmonton Oilers?
Oh yeah, that's tough. We'll save that for like a long conversation on one of our next podcasts, just because we're getting up to the time here. But man, I still think the Leafs have more pressure. But if you had to do like a power ranking of like the teams with the most pressure on them heading into the playoffs, the Leafs and the Oilers are both like in the top 4.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. 100%. And you could even make a list with them being 1, 2.
Yeah, really. You really could. You really could at this point.
Fun stuff. Come playoff time. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, man. Anyway,
it's the best, man. It's the playoffs really are, man. The playoffs are the best. You watch a game. You watch another game. You have a TV or a computer with another game. Then you get to the second round, and it's the perfect 2 series a night. You watch both. Awesome, man. Can't wait.
Oh, it's the best, especially the first round. And I know we've all complained about the playoff format, but the first round is going to be insane this year.
Yeah, so it's funny. As much as we complain about it, it's A+ entertainment when you have two really good teams playing each other right away.
Exactly. It's gonna be so much fun. Lepore, anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
Just hoping the boys can keep it going. I made a big statement earlier in the show when I said this team looks like a team that can go on a run more so than they have compared to any previous time during the season. So don't make me look like an idiot, boys. Keep going. Auston, keep scoring. Hit 40. And one thing I'm really pushing for this year, let's hope Marner gets 100 points finally. He's had some bad luck with that. Hopefully he can finally clip it.
Yeah, it's kind of been like McKinnon. He's another guy that hasn't had 100 points yet, and it's mostly been because of injuries and, shortened seasons. But both of them have been producing at over 100-point clip for the last like 5 years, and none of them have hit 100 points. But you said it, man. I really hope Marner hits 100, Matthews hits 40+ goals, and they got a nice runway here to do it. This week, they play at home against Florida, on the road against Ottawa, and then they're at home against Detroit on Sunday. So all three very winnable games, and all three are teams that they can put some points up against offensively.
Let's do it, boys.
All right, that is going to do it for episode 98 of the GFP podcast, Gluttons for Punishment. We would like to think that we are one of the best Leaf podcasts out there.
Just slide that in, eh?
I know, I don't want to pump our tires too much, but we're a damn good Leafs podcast. So
we've survived 98 episodes, man. Even that's an accomplishment. I think a lot of people give up after.
So many people give up at the start, and we've just trucked through. And thank you for all your support in GFP Nation. And
thanks, everyone.
If you want to continue showing your support, we would appreciate it so much if you give us a 5-star rating and review on either Apple or Spotify. Whether you're a first-time listener, long-time listener, it would really help us out. And if you're watching us on YouTube, it takes 2 seconds. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, join the conversation, and don't forget to hit the notification bell as well so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So for Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno. Go Leafs go, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.